He's an IBJJF certified 4th degree black belt, leader of the Body of 4 team, and national coach of the Canadian team for the JJIF. He's one of the pioneers of the Canadian mixed martial arts circuit, coach, mentor, and friend to many people in the community, and owner of the Yorkdale Martial Arts Academy. Please help me in welcoming Professor Marco Costa.
Who did this? We got to give him credit. This was incredible.
Isn't this amazing? It's really incredible, and it's brought a lot of good energy to the academy, and you know, and people just love it. Like even when we have our open mats on Sundays, you know, the community open mat, everybody comes out, and they come around the corner there and they just look and they're just like, wow, you know, it's a big wow factor for sure. So the artist is a friend of mine, one of our students here. He's amazing. Like he's got a lot of experience with street art. He's been around the game a long time. He's well known. He's done some really big projects all over the city, all over the world. His name is Mitch. He's a really good dude. His tag is at Omen514. Any professors out there want to get some of this awesome artwork in your academies, please reach out to him. He's incredible. He's really good. What really amazed me, because I kind of watched him doing it, he did this in literally 2 days.
Oh, get out.
Yeah, 2 days. Bang. I was like, what the? He's so good.
Did you come in after hours or?
No, we set it up during the less busier days that we have in the academy. Okay. So he met me here in the morning, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he was done, and in 2 days, because 4 o'clock that way, he got cleaned up afterwards and all that, set it all up. But this, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
I gotta say, as someone who trains here, you saw my reaction when I walked in, right? I was like it's literal friction. I was like, oh, yes. Like I gotta take a second to really take this in. You've had quite an interesting journey in the past specifically the past year and a half.
Yeah.
Why did you open a gym?
This is actually my third go at it.
Yeah. I thought this was 2.
No, this is my third go at it. When I first got my black belt in 2005, I was trying to figure out my life. I was married, I had a kid, and I was trying to save money to buy a home, but I'm like, I want to try this out, on the side, as a side business, as a part-time thing. And, typically, like most people, black belts, who originally want to venture into the business side of things, they don't know anything about it, and then I was naive, and I was like, open, how difficult can it be? You set up a lease, you open the academy, get some mats, do some advertising, bam, right? Not quite, not quite. I learned a lot of harsh lessons. I was only open for a year. I had a couple of misfortunes, one misfortune, and then one thing that I had to make a hard decision. I was working full time and trying to do this part time. That was the first mistake. You can't be part time in this. I think, if you're really going to be successful at it, it's got to be a full time job. That's my opinion. The second thing is I got into a car accident.
Oh.
And that comes with some costs, because it was at the time was deemed my fault and all this other stuff. So I'm like, oh damn. But the final nail on the coffin, where I was like, okay, I can't do this, was my lovely wife got pregnant with our second child. And I just couldn't justify, like, okay, I'm literally working full time to keep an academy open. That doesn't make sense, right? But it was good. It's not a bad thing. Everything is just lessons. Like, I learned a lot from that experience. Plus, I still have students today that are with me that started with me at that academy, and then they followed me, along on the next journey. So after a year, I closed. I couldn't do it. And again, I was just naive about understanding the business side of things. So I went back, and luckily for me, I had a really good professor, Professor Shafranco. He really helped me out back in the day, and he was really supportive. So he's like, okay, don't worry about it. Just come back, train at where I was training before, and he gave me the opportunity to teach some classes there. And then some of my students followed me there and trained there. And a few years later, my former Taekwondo instructor, Norman Shore, he he called me and says, "Oh, I'm opening a little academy over here. Do you want to just do a small little jiu-jitsu program?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can give that a try." So I started teaching like 2 times a day, 2 times a week at one location, and then 2 times a week at my professor's location.
And this, just for clarification, this is the old location at Egg West and Dufferin. This is the start of the second location.
No, we were at. I was doing it part time, so it wasn't actually like an official my business.
Got you.
Right? It wasn't officially my business. It was just he was letting me teach there, and we had an agreement where I got paid a percentage of the memberships. But I wasn't really like advertising or anything like that, or running a business per se. And that was on Marley Street. It was a very small little spot, like half of this mat. That was it. It was as big as it was. But then, I was, that's many years, from the first location, like many years after. I wasn't really, I had a good full-time job. I got paid well, but I was very, very, very passionate about martial arts. I was heavily involved in the jiu-jitsu scene, and a lot of my students at the time competed. Some of them are still like black belts today. Aviado, Milk. They're black. They were competing back then, and I was just coaching part time. And I was like, man, it's one of those interesting things, like midlife crisis kind of thing, right? I was 35 years old, and I'm like, and then of course, I have the most incredible wife. She's incredibly supportive and very, very positive individual. So I'm like, listen, I want to take a year off. I took a year off from my regular job, and I was just teaching, trying to figure out, okay, do I want to do this full time or not? I spoke with her, and then I spoke with the gentleman, Norman, and we decided to, okay, let's open something together full time, and that's the one on Dufferin Street.
Got you.
And we were there for 7 years. We were there for 7 years, and that was an official business. So
you were 2 separate entities just running out of the same building, so to
yeah,
speak.
exactly. Yeah. So that was an official business. We had a really, a decent agreement. At first, it was very difficult. We agreed to certain things, but it wasn't working out. And I don't want to throw him under the bus, but it got into one of those situations where it just didn't work out so well. And then we had to renegotiated, and that's when I took full control of my program, and that's when the academy started to grow like crazy, And then they got to a point, it's like, okay, I can't grow more than this. And I've always in the 7 years that I was there, I was always looking for a better situation where, again, remember what I said earlier, I don't like the part-time thing. And for this gentleman, it was a part-time thing. Right? He had a full-time job. And that's where it caused a lot of problems. He wasn't invested in it as much as I was.
Half measures versus just taking full measures.
Right? So, and then, luckily for me, about a year and a half ago, I was very fortunate to speak with one of my black belts, Ram, who we had spoken before about it briefly, but he was like, I got this thing going on over here, and if you're interested, I have the means. I'm like, fantastic. We came to an agreement and then got the ball rolling, and it was so fast. Like literally clearly. So fast. Clearly. In the sense, no, what I meant was like, we agreed, okay, we're gonna do this like in, I believe it was like end of summer, August, September, I believe.
2018, 2019.
Yeah, 2018.
Yep.
And then, okay, let's go check out some places, right? See where we are on the, how much and space-wise and blah, blah, blah. You're not gonna believe, but this was the second location we looked at. And we're looking around, like, it's pretty much move-in ready. We just make a couple adjustments, and then it just, okay, we got this, no problem. It was very reasonably priced. And then everything was, we were very, very fortunate. We got very lucky with, the right people, the right time. And like, we got the mats at a good deal. And then we met another gentleman, like Chris Bell, who hooked us up with the wall mats and all that, right? So he was like, again, came into our space at the right time, and it just boom, and it worked out great. We got a good deal on the mats 2 times. Like we got a good deal on the mats from one place, and then we got a good deal on the mats from another place. So we were able to mat the whole venue. We got a really good friend of mine, Casio, from Barrie, to help us out with the washrooms and setting up all of the change rooms and all that. So we really lucked out there because he helped us out a lot with that.
When you say that, you mean like during actual physical renovations?
Yeah. Because you bring in a contractor and they want ridiculous money.
Right.
And literally for just the cost of materials and stuff, we were able to through this amazing person's help to get this done. And then we've just boom, signed the lease. 2 months to set it up. A lot of work.
Yeah.
You got to do a lot of painting and installing, and it took 2 months to get it set up. And then boom, January 1st, we were up and running. I was blown away by the support. So pretty much 90% of the student base I had at the other location came over and joined up.
That's not an exaggeration, like 90, like
Yeah.
90%.
Yeah.
What was your original, like when you and Ram were discussing this, what was your ballpark estimate? Like how much did you expect to actually transition?
Well, that's normal. It's very normal. You lose about 10, whenever you lose move locations, you always, like any martial arts academy, you move locations, even if it's close, you lose 10 to 15%.
Okay. Oh, so
That's
the average, right? Okay.
Yeah, so we averaged out. It was okay.
Oh, okay.
So it was perfect. We had a lot, of course, incentives, and we gave them, some, an ideal situation to come. And then, of course, when they walk in the door and they see that's another level, right?
Yeah, clearly.
More professional, clean, bigger, more classes. It was an easy sell.
One of the first things I noticed, like the pro shop right in the lobby, was like.
Yeah,
that's
so we didn't have that
touch.
before, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have an opportunity to have a pro shop. Now we do. Beautiful lobby, right? It was pretty much move-in ready. It was great, and it just boom, 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 boom. Almost didn't give us a chance to take it all in. You know what I mean? I still haven't really absorbed all of it, and it's been a year and a bit because it's just been go, right? And it comes down to learn. And during the 7 years that I was at that location, I was educating myself as much as I could on the business side of martial arts, of the martial arts industry. And I was lucky to meet some people that helped me out, and I went to a couple of courses, and I went to a couple of seminars and things like that, and I learned a lot. And I've been like kind of accumulating that information, right, until I found the right person. Luckily I found Ram, because I always knew that it's a lot of work for one person. Like to open a gym, an academy by yourself, if you're the one running classes and the front end, it's too much. It's overwhelming. It's really, really is overwhelming. And even like I have two, myself and Ram, and it's still overwhelming. It's a lot of work. It gets better. You implement systems and do all this other stuff. It starts to get easier.
I got to rope this back into something you mentioned earlier, because you mentioned those 7 years you spent there were about just growing and learning about the business side of these things, right? When you finally branched off from your former partner, right, and you got to do your own thing, like your client base like exploded.
Yeah.
So what did you learn? What was the change there? What did you learn in that moment that caused the growth to occur?
Well, the agreement that I had was that I would teach classes and manage the programs, and he would manage the front end. The marketing and all this other stuff, but he dropped the ball. Gotcha. And I got upset because I'm like, listen, I'm doing this full time, and I have a family and bills to pay, and you're not like, this is not what I expected. I expected more from you based on the agreement. So allegedly I said some things. And that really emphasized my point.
Gotcha.
Right. So we renegotiated, and and I'm like, okay, I'm taking full control, and here's the agreement. He's like, okay, cool, because he couldn't afford to have me just pack and go. And that's when I'm like, okay, no, I had to do all my advertising, all my marketing, all my management, all my program. And it was hard because, again, one-man show. So I only did what I could manage, because you listen to a lot of these consultants and a lot of these business gurus and a lot of these people in this industry are like, okay, if you want to be a $1 million school, you gotta do this, and this.
At what cost, so to speak? I don't know. Like my experience as a consumer.
Yeah, it was more like it's a lot for one person's plate at once. So I only implemented the things that I could manage, right? Plus teaching full time.
The things you did do, you do well, but it's like take a little bit more of a limited scope, right?
Yeah. So I only did the things that I could do well, and then definitely the student base like tripled.
Oh, okay.
5 months or something like that. So that's when I had that big boom, and it started to do really, really well. And keep in mind, like it wasn't just the academy. I have affiliates, and I have a team to run, and I'm heavily invested in my athletes. Heavily invested in the competitive community.
I can attest to that.
I love going to tournaments and being in tournaments. So yeah, it was a very, very hectic few years.
Well, it seems like it's like I don't know. Look, I don't know what's going on outside, but outside looking in, it looks like it's like you're quite literally living the dream, right? So
no, it's still very, very challenging. It's very, very challenging. I am not by any means rolling in the dough or anything like that, but it's definitely improved over the years, and there's a lot more room for improvement, definitely. But what I've learned is that not to do everything at once. Try to implement it slowly. Like, what can we do now? If it works and it sticks, great. Keep it up. If it doesn't fly right away, okay, then maybe we need to reassess or put it in the back burner and wait for the right time. Like I said, earlier about like if you want to have $1 million school, there's a lot that goes into it. A lot of programming and a lot of things that need to be done. And some schools have the structure for that, the infrastructure for that, and some don't. So I'm not saying it's not possible. Of course it's possible, but do I want to go that route? Not at this stage, Ultimately, I got into this because I love to teach. I love to be on the mat. I don't want to fall into the trap, I guess, of a lot of other professors where they get into it, right? But then you see them years later on, they're not on the mat as much, They're not teaching as much. They start to delegate a lot because they need to focus on the front end.
Being a gym manager versus being someone that's actually teaching on that side?
Yeah. And I keep going back to, I didn't get into this to be a gym manager. I'd rather delegate that part. I'd rather delegate the front end so I can do what I love, which is to teach and to coach and to be on the mats. And that's the most challenging thing, because I keep being pulled to the front end, So yeah, it's a constant balancing act.
And from what I've seen, like with how you and Ram interact with the gym, it's like it's a good partnership. It seems to work out.
Oh, he's great. He's like, man, he's really good. Because even personality-wise, right? I'm a very emotional-based person, right? So I get fired up, I get excited, or I get frustrated because I worry a lot about, okay, what's going on here, what's going on there, and Ram is very stoic. He's very very calm. Nothing seems to rattle him, which is great. Because could you imagine having two of me? Man, it'd be crazy. Like, we'd be closed by now. So yeah, he's perfect as far as like, the way things are going. Yeah, it's working out really well. Because him being calm and not worrying just makes me at ease a little bit. It makes me relax a little bit. So it's great. It's really good.
Okay, so in that case, it seems like you had a lot of ups and downs, but it's come together. It's still
so much room for improvement, right? There's so much more that can be done. But again, I want to implement it where we can manage it, because if there's too many things going on at the same time, then things fall through the cracks and problems arise, and but Putting it into like the belt system, BJJ belt system, I'm only a purple belt at this, man. I was only a blue belt like 2 years ago, and now I'm like, okay, I've improved to a purple belt, but there's so much more. Like, I am definitely not a black belt at this like martial arts business thing.
What would you consider black belt in the business?
There's a lot of really good guys out there doing really good work. And some of them are like, I look at them as mentors kind of way. It's like, man, look at this guy and how is he successful. And I think it's important to do that. Like, you look at your peers, see which ones of them are successful, why are they being successful, and you kind of like try and take a page from their book kind of thing. And there's so many good people out there worldwide doing fantastic business, right? That are making their schools and their affiliations and their teams super successful. And you just try to take pages from their book and see if it works for you, or twist it up a little bit to add your flavor to it. But yeah, I see them where they are, and I'm like, okay, I'm here, and that's what I'm talking about. There's so much more to learn and improve to get to the level of some of these other people in our industry, So yeah, I got a long way to go still, I think.
As someone who's attended a lot of martial arts gyms since childhood, I have a small concern about I guess what you described there, and I want your take on this.
Yeah.
I've noticed that as the schools get bigger, or as they franchise, or whether it be just like scaling upwards in general, I guess the term Mcdojification of a gym.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship, like thought process with that Mcdojo thing. What do you consider a Mcdojo? How do you how did you define the word? Like, how do you see a Mcdojo?
So from a personal standpoint, the reason I got into this was because I really wanted to learn how to defend myself, and there's some childhood trauma. We don't have to get into that, but
yeah, like most of us. No, dude, trust me, I'm not gonna lie. I fell in love with martial arts because I was bullied as a kid. So like most of us, right? But the funny thing is, a lot of the most successful people, a lot of successful people in martial arts were bullied. Like, the biggest that we know of, GSP, like, he talks about it all the time, right? Yeah. But he became one of the greatest fighters ever. So adversity can do wonderful things.
I thought I was learning something legitimate as a early teenager, and then I got into an altercation, and it was very, very clear it wasn't. So this is basically, I got taught fake news. And that has never sat well with me. I thought I was a confident individual, and then it turns out my whole
world was shattered. Yeah.
So when I say Mcdojo,
you're not the first or the last.
I don't think that they're bad people, but it's more like you can't be.
They're delusional.
This is dangerous.
Yeah.
I could have gotten really hurt.
Okay, I'll define Mcdojo in two things, right? One, ability of the instructor and the school and what they're selling, martial arts wise, right? And then there's the business side where everybody automatically assumes when the martial arts academy is doing really, really well and has a lot of students, that they're in Mcdojo. Yeah. Right? Because they're selling out. And there's truths to both. But what people have to understand is you gotta stop pigeonholing everybody into, these kind of things. There are plenty of extremely successful martial arts schools, doesn't matter what martial art, that are successful business-wise and they have high skill, right? They're high ability, good coaching, good results, good fighters, so on and so on. And then there are high, successful, lots of students, academies making lots of money that are belt factories, right? They just, regardless of what I want people to is like put aside the money aspect of it as far as like if they're successful business-wise or not. That's irrelevant in my mind. It really comes down to the skill set of the instructor, the skill set of the students, and what they're selling. And some are blatantly obvious they're Mcdojos, and some are, there's plenty of non-successful schools out there that, the professor or the instructor is doing it for the passion and the love, and their students are phenomenal, right? But they're broke. They're not, they don't have
world-class athlete, world-class
Yeah.
competitor, but it's like
Yeah.
the business side isn't there. But
Yeah.
but it doesn't really matter either way because it's a labor of love, right?
Yeah, it is unfortunate that in our industry, but here's the thing, it doesn't matter which industry. There's always charlatans or whatever, right? Sellouts. But here's something interesting. There are also a lot of academies or Mcdojos that just don't know any better. Why? Because if I'm a student and I go to an academy and they're selling this thing, and definitely, like you said, maybe in your scenario, they're not, really doing the right thing by showing and teaching something that's effective. But I buy into it. I just don't know any better. I'm delusional. I just don't know any better. I go through the whole system. I get my belts. I get my black belt. I love it because, I'm enjoying it. I love the relationships I build. I like my instructor. He seems like a really good guy. He seems like he knows what he's talking about. He's got the credentials and all this other stuff.
It's not he's a bad guy,
right? It's not he's a bad guy.
He's actually a good guy.
Maybe he's a good guy, but he's selling something that maybe, again, it could be like my point I'm trying to make is like, okay, I love all this. I want to open my own thing. So that doesn't really necessarily mean that you're a bad person. You're a McDojo, yeah, but maybe you're delusional to it. You're just doing what you know and what was passed down to you.
You were never taught any better, so it's just
the
cycle keeps going.
And so the cycle keeps going. So I think there's so many layers to this. What I don't like is like people try to make life black and white. It's not. Life is not black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray. Anytime, even recently, someone called me, one of my affiliates called me. He's like, I got a friend of mine here in the city that we're in, and they're really upset because some dude who's definitely not credentialed is opening around the corner. And I'm like, so? Who cares? He's like, this. What are you worried about, man? There's always going to be people like this. And if you give them attention, they're gonna be have some, they're gonna be in the scene, they're gonna be there. But if you completely ignore them, they'll eventually go back to the hole they came out of. They'll crawl back into the hole they came out of, right? I learned this over the years. I used to get excited, man. I used to get mad. Back in the day, oh yeah, dojo storm. Let's go. Let's invade this guy and beat him up, right? But then, you mature and you learn that it's just a waste of time and energy. Just, what I keep saying is like, dude, to my guy, to my friend, I said, listen, focus on your academy, focus on your students, focus on the quality of what you are providing. Don't worry about what others are doing. People know, people will realize. And I said, eventually what happens, like, okay, they'll go to his school, they're gonna go to tournaments, they're gonna get beat up, they're going to realize that he's not at that level, and they're going to go join real schools anyway. The only tragedy is when, they go to these academies of guys that are not credentialed, and they realize that maybe they were, what's the word I'm looking for? Cheated in a way, right? And then they quit jiu-jitsu, period. That's when I get vexed. Yeah. Because it's not jiu-jitsu's fault, It's not the art's fault. It's always an individual. We all know how amazing jiu-jitsu is. You know what I mean? So you can't attack jiu-jitsu overall. It's always an individual problem. It's always an individual problem. And most problems are egocentric, right? So, some people's egos, they're delusional about who they are and where they're at, and sometimes they don't even know any better. They just believe they are who they say they are, right? I don't worry about those things anymore. I focus 100%, on. That doesn't mean I keep an eye on the community, but most of my concentration is always in here. My students, my staff, my team, my affiliates. That's where all my energy is at all the time. That's where I'm worrying about all the time and focusing on all the time. You know, if there's a goofball, you know, open, and that's the thing. Like same thing. Like I had a couple of gyms open near me, and you know, at first I was like, oh my god, you know, they're gonna steal away, you know, students. Like I'm competing for students. And then after I was like, oh, actually, I don't worry about that. You know, I don't worry about that anymore.
I'd imagine.
As long as I, you know, do a proper job on my end, I'm gonna keep being successful. What people should really do, if you're interested in taking up martial arts, and I find that, you know, the difficulty sometimes is that the first people look at is, because people think it's credentials, it's not. If you're clueless to the martial art and you want to start a martial art, you look for a couple of things, right? Conveniency is the number one thing. So, can I afford it? And is it close to where I live? That's it, right? So, that, you know, that's what they're gonna look for first. Then they're gonna go for is like, okay, do I like this place? Right? Then they look at, okay, who the instructor is kind of like at the bottom of the list. It doesn't really matter. You know, everybody thinks, oh, you know, yeah, you can advertise this and that, but ultimately it's their experience that's going to sell them where they're going to train. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to provide the best experience a new student can have, right? With the curriculums, the structure, the way my academy runs. So when people come in and do the free trial, right, they love it and they want to stay. Right? Versus going to maybe around the corner or whatever, and they go in and they have a bad experience. And you know, so I always say when people say, "Oh, I have a friend in this city. Which place would you recommend?" I'm like, "Okay, I can recommend this place because maybe I know the person. But if I don't know anyone in that city, I say pick 3 or 4 places, go check them all out, and keep in mind you're going to be invested for the next few years at this place. Make sure you like the place, like the environment, like the, you know, like the instruction, you know, how people run classes, and that's the place you should go to, regardless of how far from your house it may be. I mean, within reason. Like, so if I'm saying, okay, if this place is half an hour away, right, but the other place is 45 minutes away, but I had a better experience, then drive the 45 minutes. Right?
You'll have a better time.
You're gonna have a better time long term. Right? So it's about service. You know, if you provide a good, structured, safe, clean service, right, then you shouldn't be worried about your competition or whatever, right?
You know what? You bring up a really interesting point here about service and beginners, white belts in particular. Mm-hmm. When I started, there was a bit of a stigma where you just destroy beginners. It's like throwing stuff at the wall, whatever sticks, right? That builds mental toughness, grit.
Yeah.
But we seem to be out of that now.
Yeah.
What's your take on the?
Well, I mean, how do I say this? It comes down to, as an instructor or as an academy owner, what do you want? Right? What do you want? If you want a competition team, fight team, you know, killers only on the mat, then you'll have a small academy. You know, at the most, if you're lucky, 50 people. If you're lucky. But if you're okay with that, and you can manage that, and if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with it. So yeah, some white belts come in, they get beat up. Those who have the inclination, that, you know, natural ability, grit, competitiveness in them, they'll stay. But the average person who has a job and a career and he just wants to learn martial arts for, you know, self-defense purposes, or they just want to, you know, learn something new, they're going to quit. Right? Because, you know, they can't afford to get hurt because of with their jobs. They, you know, they don't like the experience of who the hell likes the experience of getting beat up every day? Nobody does.
Literally traumatizing. Yeah.
Nobody does, right? Again, it's only for the certain individuals. Can you get average person, to build that kind of thing and get to it? Yes, of course. So but it takes time.
How do you foster that? Like, how do you
it takes levels.
Okay.
Right? Incrementally increasing the intensity. right? And incrementally increasing the difficulty.
Show them that
There is a path. Yeah. There is a path, and everyone is capable. Anything is possible. But again, some you can, and the world's funny. You know, humanity is funny. Some people, like I said, you know, you have that cliche, they're born to do this, right? Yeah, there's some people that walk in, and I know when they walk in and I see them move, and I'm like, this person has the it. They're gonna be something if they really stick with it. And then there's others who's like, man, this is just. I think what people don't like to hear is that they're average. You know, nobody wants to hear that you're average. Everybody wants to feel special. Everybody wants to feel like they're gonna be world champion.
I know a few people who've had that paradigm shift where it's like they realize they're not going to be a world champion, and then it just destroys them.
Yeah, it destroys their ego and they quit. Yeah. Right?
I think the worst I see is they never really try.
Yeah, or you know, but that's common. That's very common. People believe that they want to do something and then they realize how hard it is. You know, to be a world champion is not easy.
It's not a normal lifestyle, I would imagine.
Not at all. Not one bit. Everybody, anyone, you know, when you say jiu-jitsu is for everyone, yes it is. If you want to practice it in a casual, for fun, you know, learning self-defense, you know, rolling because you enjoy the rolling and the chess play idea, you know, it's a very cerebral, jiu-jitsu can be very cerebral, and it can be done in a healthy way, you know. But if you want to be a competitive athlete, winning medals all the time, that's another level. And what people don't want to hear is that only a select few make it to that level. Not everybody make it to that level. Everybody can enjoy the art. Everybody can train full time. Everybody can have the ability to reach black belt. But to reach elite status, only a select few can reach that elite status. And I think it hurts people's feelings when you say, sorry man, you can't do that. You know, everybody can, but if you're not willing to do what it takes, then you can't, right? So if you can't put in this much time, if you can't sacrifice a lot of things, I'm sorry, you're not gonna make it. I've had lots of conversations with guys like, Professor, I wanna go all the way. Sure. All right, show me that you need to do this, and this. And then, and they can't, or you see it right after a while that, you know, they're just not sacrificing, they're not putting in the extra time, they're not putting in the extra hours to drill, it's like, you're not gonna make it, sorry. You know, you can, and again, there's levels to the game. You can train to a certain aspect and do well locally. And we have plenty of local tournaments that you can be a champion at and have success in, and you know, and you can do really, really well. And we've seen this from all the local academies, including my own. I have a lot of, you know, talent that wins locally a lot. But to go elite, you need to be like, the game has changed so much from when I started that it is more professional now. You need to really train full time if you want to be successful at the world level. To become a professional sport in a way, not professional in a way you make, you know, professional money, but, you know, like it's getting, you know, not yet, but you know how we have, you know, the Olympic level athletes, right? For wrestling, judo, taekwondo, boxing, right? Jiu-jitsu is really rapidly getting to that, whereas, okay, we have that elite group, like Olympic type idea.
Kids doing this since they were 4, dedicated coaches for nutrition, strength and conditioning.
Exactly. Right? So the average person training 2-3 times a week will never reach elite status, you know, in the sport.
Hard facts.
But you can still train really hard 3 or 4 times a week and win a few local tournaments, you know, and give yourself, you know, and have yourself some lower level, like kind of like amateur level success. You can have amateur level success, but you're not going to have pro level success unless you're willing to sacrifice all of those things, right?
Oh, it's just like, I guess it's a discussion between like reaching greatness and being good, right?
Everybody can be good, but to be great is, right? It's again, the cliche thing is like, man, if everybody could do it, you know, then You know what I'm saying? No, not everybody can. It's just life. Some people have a hard time swallowing that, though. You know.
What's the best part about owning a gym? What's the worst part? Like out of this whole odyssey that you've been on, starting from when you opened the first part, what's the best? What's the worst?
The best is doing what I'm passionate about, and that's martial arts, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love it, man. You know, when I'm on the mats with my gi on, it's not work. You know what I mean? It's not work. It's what I love to do. And I think I've proven that I'm not so bad at it. You know what I mean? I have some ability. So I love that. You know, it's what I'm passionate. You know, and they say, "Oh, do what you're passionate about." And then, yes, you know, I'm very, very fortunate to do what I'm passionate about. But I want to be clear that that comes with a lot of work and a lot of effort, a lot of dedication. And you know that's if you want to, again, if for all the people out there, if you want to do something that you're passionate about, it just doesn't happen. You gotta put in that effort and take those steps towards it every day, and you gotta envision it in your mind every day. I don't want to go into specifics, but you know, there's been milestones in my life and things that I've reached in this realm where I fixate, and then it comes to fruition, right? So your passion has to be your fixation. You have to fixate on it, you know, and it will come, it will happen, you know. The hardest part about this in general, or just the business?
Whatever comes to mind, like just.
Well, you know, I get two things. You asked me for one, I'm gonna give you two things. One, I do struggle and I am frustrated sometimes with the front end. You know, the marketing, the management, you know, implementing the systems, the programming, training staff, you know, that front end aspect of the business, you know, the real business side of it, not the martial arts side of it. I struggle with that sometimes because remember, I just want to teach all day, you know. The other thing, and it takes a lot of things, sometimes a lot of professors, I think, and a lot of academy owners, you know, in the beginning, you know, it's in the beginning, and even now I struggle with it sometimes. I accept it more now, I understand it more now, but in the beginning it was hard, and that's that you can't make everybody happy. You know, you just can't. You know, there's always going to be people that are going to not like the way you do things. There's always going to be people that don't like your personality. There's always going to be people that don't like the way you do your business. There's always going to be people that clash with you, right? And at first, like, I like to think I'm a pretty decent person, and at first it's like, what do you mean? Like, how could you, what the hell, like this and that, right? And I used to take it personal. But then, you know, you just start to realize there's no need to take it personal. It's impossible to keep everyone happy, and it's impossible to accommodate every single person. And there's attrition. You're always gonna lose some people. Even students, like, I try to provide the best service I can, and then, you know, the safest, cleanest, most friendliest environment, but people quit. And I used to take it personal. Oh, why would you quit? Why did they quit? Like, I'm doing the best that I can here. But it's just, you realize that you want jiu-jitsu to be for everybody. And it's possible. And it should be that everyone should do jiu-jitsu. But the fact of the matter is that jiu-jitsu is not for everybody. And it doesn't resonate with some individuals. And they quit because they just don't find the interest in it, and or they just don't have the gravitation towards it. It's like, well, I really don't enjoy rolling around with people on the ground.
It's not fair.
And it's, again, it's not on me, it's not on the environment, it's not on the students that are here, it's just the individual. It's just the individual. And I used to take that, like, I was like, man, come on. But then you realize there's just an attrition rate to this, and, you know, there's, for every few thousand, hundreds, or whatever it is that come in, you're always going to lose a certain percentage, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you can't take that personal. You can't take that stuff personal. There's going to be situations where, okay, you get to certain points with certain individuals, and you might have been great up until that point, but then maybe something happens, and you're not on the same page, and they're going to move on, right? And you just got to let it go. You can't dwell on it. You can't be like, it is what it is. We're not on the same page anymore. Good luck. And they go one way and you go another. It's life. These things happen, right? So that's been like, the two things. Like, I find the front end sometimes a little bit challenging. It's what gives me most of my anxiety, to be honest. But I'm glad that I have the balance of being able to get on the mats, and that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I really enjoy, and that kind of balances things out.
I guess I've heard a lot of other coaches also mention this, and gym owners too. But I want to give you two kind of statements here. It's like the first one is there are easier ways to make money than opening a gym, and the second thing that came to mind was if you want to roll, don't open a gym. Like because the dream seems to be like, I just want to roll all day and like do that.
I think that a lot of the times that is how it goes, but I think it goes back to the same thing where they're just not knowledgeable enough in the business side of the industry. So they get stuck trying to figure out the front end, and then they realize it takes a lot of time and energy, so that takes them away from the mats and from teaching or from training, right? And then they find that it's a hard balance. It comes down to two things, and I struggle with it too. I'm not saying that I'm Mr. Perfect. I'm nowhere near that. It comes down to two things: education and time management. If you manage your time properly. I run an extremely busy life with my business, but I'm on the mats quite often. I don't train because of physical issues, not because I don't want to. I could be rolling every night if I really wanted to, right? If I really wanted to, I could be training and rolling every night, plus running a front end and being involved in the business side of things, which I am still very involved in the front end. It's time management. You really need to schedule everything, and yeah, sometimes, you get derailed and things happen here, happen there. I literally just got over a flu and just did nothing for 4 days. So, sometimes sometimes of the year are busier than others, but it really comes down to time management and how well educated you are on the business.
You just get caught up in like, if you're trying to learn as you go, it's like you get caught up in trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, if you're trying to figure out everything, no, you can't. You can't.
Okay.
You gotta time manage. You gotta block everything into. And going back to the first thing that we were talking about is like, don't try to do everything all at once.
Like you said, small steps.
Yeah, you don't try to implement everything at once.
One good thing
right?
at a time.
One solid system at a time, and then you'll see improvements, definitely. I could, if I had the ability and if I didn't have the issues that I have, I would roll every day. I would train every day with my students. So, and I have a very busy academy and affiliates and all this other stuff. So, I think that's definitely a jaded way to look at it.
But understandable. Understandable?
Yeah, in a way. I could see how, the problem is like, the truth is there's way more of those individuals, right? Which paints that larger picture. Right? There's way more, a lot of academies where the people are just not, business savvy. Again, like I was in my first year, right? So there's a lot of those individuals. You get a black belt, you love jiu-jitsu, you want to open an academy, and then you realize, like, oh shit, that's a lot of work, right? And then they get caught up in the work, and then they train less and less and less, and then they start to delegate, classes to their lower belts, and you get caught in that, and then next thing you know, that's where you spend most of your time.
You're no longer training.
You're no longer training, right? Okay. So this happens a lot, and I think that's why it's painted that larger picture, and it's kind of like, what you're gonna hear, right? But there's also plenty of successful stories out there of people who are doing really well and have the time to train. Like there's people competing still at the highest level, and then they run an academy. These are like world level, world champion type guys who have an academy, and at the same time, you know, still have a very competitive career. Now, to elaborate, I'm pretty certain they have assistants.
You have to.
They have staff put in place, and they have, you know, a manager, a program manager, a desk person, you know. They have help of instructors when they go away and they're away for a week at competing they have backup instructors, you know. So there's definitely systems put in place. You got to have systems in place in order to make that where you can be
a high-end competitor
and run a successful academy.
Most academies usually affiliate with a bigger name. However, you at some point decided to go independent. And I'm really curious as to why you chose to go independent versus staying with a big name.
I didn't choose to go independent. I was forced to go independent. I think the best way to say it is like I was part of a team. And it was part of a pioneering team, a team that, you know, was heavily involved in the early days of jiu-jitsu in Canada, where a lot of high-level guys trained at who are currently black belts, academy owners in the GTA area, you know, and Ontario, you know, and I was very, very fortunate to be a part of that team and to train with these, you know, a lot of these great guys. But, you know, the main professor, and then you know, eventually, like we had the local the person who was our professor, and then we had our connection to Brazil. And like it seems to happen often, and I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now has this bad reputation where teams split a lot. Right? And that's common. Unfortunately, it is common, and it does happen, and it happened to our team. And I'm not saying this is what it was. I'm saying that this is what most of the time it is for most team splits. I'm not saying that's what happened with us. I'm just saying this is the cause of most team splits. Two things: ego or money. Right? Most teams split because of ego clashes or money issues. So there was a couple of splits in the team, and then I was forced to pick a side, so I picked a side. I was happy with the choice I made. And then eventually years go by, and then, you know, myself and this person, you know, something happened, and I wasn't the only one, like, you know, I was kind of like ostracized or, you know, whatever. And then I'm like, oh man, I'm by myself. What am I going to do? Right?
Just become one of the larger teams in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Yeah, no big deal. Yeah, what am I going to do? Be really successful.
It was just meeting the right people at the right time, with having the same vision, having followed the same path. It was really just like me being me. I love jiu-jitsu. I had successful athletes, and when you're successful, you open people's eyes. Next thing you know, someone comes to you, is like, hey, I like the way you're doing things, gonna be a part of it. Yeah, sure. And then, I like the way you're doing things, gonna be a part of it. Fine, okay. And then that's how it all started. It's like people just liked the work that I was doing, and they weren't happy what they were at. Again, it comes down to what do you do? How do you run your affiliations? I know affiliation is perfect. I don't think mine is perfect either. We have our own internal struggles. Every affiliation does. But, you know, I was just like, well, we like the way you're doing things. Can we be a part of it? And it grew from there. And, and I was just forced to be independent. Fortunately and unfortunately, it got out of hand. You know, as far as like, I have 16 affiliates in Canada, and I have 4 in Colombia. That's another story in itself. And it's like where I'm like, even if I wanted to join a bigger team now, and I've considered it. You know, I have considered it. I have looked into it many a times. Should I join, an elite class affiliation. But it's complicated. How do I bring 16 affiliates with me to, it's a big conversation.
It's like you're a big ship in itself now, right? So
It's well, I wouldn't say a big ship, but it's big enough that it's complicated, right? It's complicated. I have to have discussions on how do I fit into their picture while maintaining, what I got. I work really hard, and I've a lot of stress, and again, what I said earlier, it's really hard to keep everybody happy, right? So there's to keep 16 affiliate heads happy, and then sometimes there's conflict between affiliate heads, and you get stuck in the middle, right? So it's a very complicated thing, and I've put in so much effort in the last 10 years to bring BO4 to where it is, that I'm not just going to hand it all of them over to someone else. Big conversation, and I've had a few conversations, but nothing that I was 100% happy with. So at this point, I'm not totally against it, but I'm not chasing it. Plus, how do you convince 16 other academies to go in on it with me? I'm pretty certain that I would lose a bunch of them in the process. So you got to go back to weighing the pros and cons, right? So I just kind of put that on the back burner. If something comes up that makes sense for everyone on the team, then yeah, why not? As long as it improves us and makes us better, then yeah, I'm okay with it. My ego's not that big, man. Trust me. I'd be willing to be under someone. I would not. It's not a problem for me. It's more, okay, how to keep the affiliates I have happy. If they're happy with the way it would go, no problem. If not, then forget it.
Is there anything you want to get off your chest?
Just that the community be a little bit more positive out there. Don't fall into the traps of spreading negativity, spreading hate. Support all the tournaments, regardless of who's running them. Support all the events that have to do with jiu-jitsu, seminars, charity events. Just support jiu-jitsu in general, because our sport is nowhere near where it could be overall. We're all in the same boat, and we're all a big family. And I know there's, always miscommunications and misunderstandings within families, but we're all in the same family. We're in the jiu-jitsu family. So our sport can be so much more than what it is. Our martial art can be so much more than what it is. But it comes down to having a really strong overall community. So don't just support all the events, all the tournaments, all the seminars, all the charity events, all the charity causes. Just support those things as a community. I have to, of course, absolutely thank my sponsor, Maeda Canada, and Jeff Santos from Fighters Market. They really take care of me. They're really good people. They're really nice to me, and they're doing fantastic things with the gis and their apparel. They're doing a great job in the community as well. David Costa, Cat, and Under the Gi, they're really amazing, and they're good to me too. And all my affiliates and my affiliate leaders, my team, my students, for all their help and support, and to really allow me to live my dream. So I'm really, really grateful and thankful, and it's been awesome.
Marco, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So much.